Hi, welcome back to Joe Blogs, and today I'm in the historic city of Durham. Behind me you can see Durham Castle. Just further along is Durham Cathedral. I won't turn the camera anymore because the sun's there and it'll block out all of the colour. And I'm standing on one of the bridges. I've got cobbled street here. And the reason I'm here is because of the university. I've come up for a visit, and the university in Durham is traditionally seen as the third best in the UK. Generally speaking, you get a lot of students here who've either applied for Cambridge or Oxford and been unsuccessful, and so their next choice is Durham. And historically, it has ranked really high in the table. So if you're looking at this video thinking about Durham as a university, then hopefully I'll be able to give you a flavour as to what it's like. But if you're just thinking of maybe popping here for a visit, I would definitely recommend it because it's a really nice historic city. It's actually over 1600 years old. Those two structures behind me have existed for around that sort of time, and we'll talk about that later in the video. We'll talk about the legend of St. Cuthbert, which is a really interesting story, so hang around for that one. But in today's video, I'm going to give you a flavour as to what Durham's like, what it's like to come and just spend a bit of time here. And I can tell you, having been here a few times, it's really quite relaxing. It's a really nice place to come to, very safe. And if you're a student thinking about coming here, I'll definitely recommend it because the place is dominated by students. Everywhere you look, there are teenagers. And the reason for that is because they equate to around 40% of all of the people in Durham. And I think in the city centre, it's more like about 85 to 90%. So Durham is most famous for its university, and I'm standing outside the Language Centre here, which is located right in the heart of the city centre. In fact, there's a lot of university buildings all around here, so there'll be lots of students pouring out at some point. And Durham historically has been seen as the place where students want to come to if they don't go to Oxford or Cambridge. It's seen as the next best option. And it has something like a 95% graduate success rate in terms of obtaining jobs. So that's one of the reasons why it's so popular. But the other reason is because it's so close to the city centre. Everybody hangs out in the city centre, and as I said earlier in the video, the whole place is dominated by students. Around 40% of all of the people here are students, but actually in the city centre, it feels much higher than that. And pretty much every bar and restaurant has some sort of student discount, some sort of student night. So you can have a fantastic time being a student here. And I think it's a really attractive place to come to because it's a city, so you're not just living in the middle of nowhere, but it feels more like a campus university. You've just got the run of the whole of this city to yourselves. And it's super safe. You know, it has a really good reputation in terms of student safety. Everybody walks everywhere. Nobody feels threatened. I don't think there's been any major incidents here. So it's definitely an attractive place to come to. It's not that easy to get into. You have to do really well in terms of your grades. You have to score really highly. But once you're here, I think it's a fantastic place to learn and kick on from. And anybody that's been to Durham always speaks really highly of it. So the university is probably the single thing that Durham is most famous for. It's got a great reputation and it still remains very attractive for students today. Some of the university buildings are just over that side. All the students will be pouring out of those shortly. But I just thought I'd show you another different towpath that I'm on here. You can see I'm on a lovely little towpath. It's really empty, there's nobody down here. But it's really just very pleasant to just walk along with the river and all the students and the bridges. We've got a bridge behind me here. I've just come down from that bridge. There's lots of walking that you can do in Durham. It's a really nice, relaxing place. It feels like, although it's a city centre, it does feel like you're close to the countryside. You don't feel too far away from nature, so you don't feel that it's too overpowering because the city centre itself is predominantly pedestrianised. So there are some vehicles that are coming to access the restaurants and the bars, but predominantly there's no cars, so you don't get any traffic there. So I think that's one of the big strengths of Durham, is that you can just walk around. There's no pollution, there's no cars, there's no traffic, there's none of that. There are a lot of students. You probably bump into a lot of students rather than vehicles. But I think that's one of the charms of the city, that it's got this vibrant energy about it. And if you're a student yourself, it's absolutely fantastic because basically you're running the whole city. You've got it to yourself. I wouldn't want to be a local here, I don't think, because every bar and restaurant seems to be overpowered with students. But as a student, that's absolutely fantastic because it means that you're going to bump into lots of people you know all the time, and it's just a great place to be. And I think anybody that's been to university in Durham absolutely loves it. They always talk really highly about it. So it's definitely, if you're thinking about going to university here, I think it's definitely one of the best in the UK. Behind me is Durham Castle, which, along with Durham Cathedral, is a World Heritage Site. So this has been preserved, and you can see that this is also around 1100 years old. So really amazing structure, and it's really well preserved. And in fact, this was donated to the University of Durham a long time ago, and so the university students actually live here. They stay here. This is a hall of residence. This is a college, so you can't actually go in here. You can't just wander in because there's security, because the students go in there. You can do a guided tour. So if you come to Durham and you organise it online, they have guided tours at certain parts of the day, but you're only allowed to go into certain parts of the castle because a lot of it is being occupied by students. But it's a really amazing structure, definitely worth having a look, and it's right next to the cathedral. If I just walk this way, you can see that the cathedral is directly behind us here. So if you come to the cathedral, then you can just walk along here and see the remains of the castle. But it's really amazing because a lot of these castles are ruins in the UK these days. This is obviously still a working building. That's where all of the students live. And here we are walking down the main high street, and you can see it's relatively pedestrianised. There's not a lot of traffic. Obviously there's access for the shops, so you do get the old van, but it does feel very safe and nice and friendly, but it is very quaint. Quite hilly, so you can see that we're going uphill down there and downhill down there, but it's got a really lovely old feel to it. All of the shops are built into the old buildings, really quite pleasant, really good old English feel to the whole place. Very nice to just walk around, and there are so many cafes and restaurants and bars. One of the best things to do in Durham is to come out and eat, and I've been doing some of that since I've been here, and there are some really fantastic places. On the left here, the Fat Hippo, I've been there for a burger. Definitely recommend that. It's got quite a laid-back, studenty type vibe to it, as you would imagine, because of the dominance of students around here. And I went to the Flat White Kitchen yesterday for lunch. Absolutely superb. Definitely recommend that if you are coming to Durham. But the whole place has just got a very relaxed vibe to it. One of the really nice things to do in Durham is to take a walk alongside the River Wear, and they've got a really nice towpath, and you can go for a long way. So you can see here that we've got the cathedral and the castle behind me. So that's on the opposite side to where I am now. I've come on this side of the river, but it's just a really pleasant walk. Very nice. Lots of students walking backwards and forwards to university, as you would expect, because this whole city is dominated by students. In the 2021 census, Durham's population was 50,000 people, and there are 20,000 students at Durham. So you can do the math and work out that basically 2 out of every 5 people, which is about 40%, are students. But actually, it's much more than that, because most people aren't walking around the city centre constantly, but the students are. So when you do walk around, you do tend to find there are a lot of young people, teenagers and people in their early 20s, rushing around, either going to lectures or going to the pub or doing whatever they're doing. But it does make it a vibrant and active city. It does feel really quite happening. It's fun. As you can see, got some great scenery behind me here. And I'm walking up towards a weir in the river, which is very close to the town centre. Really very pleasant walk. It's quite cold today, so I'm wrapped up warm. You can see I've got my coat on, but it's still really pleasant. You've got all the trees and lots of foliage behind me. Just coming up to the cathedral here, which is really quite a nice, impressive building to walk past. But yeah, this is definitely something that I would recommend doing when you come to Durham. Just come down to one of the bridges. You'll see there's towpath. There's one on the opposite side as well, so you can go that side if you prefer. And I'm walking along here. I'm going to go to the university sports ground, which is called Maiden Castle, to have a look at the facilities that Durham University offers to anybody that likes sport. So here I am a little bit further along the path walk, and you can see that I've come to the weir, which is where the river drops down. It's like a mini waterfall, basically. And this is a really pleasant spot to come to. You've got the cathedral there, we've got the castle further down. It's just a really nice walk. It's nice to be out and about, being surrounded by countryside. You can see I've got a swan behind me here. It's just a pleasant thing to do, and I think it really encapsulates everything about Durham, that it just feels like a nice, relaxing place. You can come, you can chill out, you can have a walk, listen to the water flowing, or you can go and get to a bar, get to a restaurant, get to a cafe, have something to eat, and that's what I'm going to do now. Here I am coming off the main bridge, and I'm going down to the Riverview kitchen, which is one of the restaurants that's alongside the water. Now, I would definitely recommend taking in when you come to Durham. I've actually just been here for a coffee and a bit of cake, but I thought I'd just do a bit of filming here because it's in a really nice spot. It doesn't look like it at the moment, but if I turn around, you can see that we're right on the river. Really quite nice, pleasant, got great views over the water. If you're looking for somewhere for coffee or for lunch or for dinner, then I definitely recommend taking that in. And we've also got a really nice footpath here, which goes all the way up to the University Sports Ground. So here I am with historic Durham Cathedral right behind me, and I thought it was worth sharing the story because it is a great one. Around 1,600 years ago, a group of monks were living on an island called Lindisfarne, which is relatively close to Durham. And one of those monks, who was called Cuthbert, died, and so they buried him in a tomb. Now, 11 years later, they needed to do something with the body, so they reopened the tomb and found that his body hadn't decayed at all. It was in immaculate condition, exactly the same as how they'd left it 11 years previously. And so they took this as a sign from God that Cuthbert was a holy person. And lots of people started coming to visit Cuthbert's body, and then miracles started to happen. People were having miracles. So he became canonized. He got made a saint. He was Saint Cuthbert. Now, around 100 years later, the Vikings decided to invade England, and they started marauding through places like Lindisfarne. So the monks got a bit concerned and decided that they needed to move to the mainland. They felt a bit exposed on the island. So they moved and they took Cuthbert's body with them. And apparently, legend has it that they wandered the land for 11 years looking for somewhere to stay. And then one day Cuthbert's coffin stopped. It simply wouldn't budge. They couldn't move it. And they took this as a sign that Cuthbert wanted to go somewhere. And then one of the monks had a vision. Cuthbert came to him during the night and said, "I want to go to Dunholm," which apparently is what Durham is called today. So Dunholm was the original version, but they didn't know where Dunholm was. They were struggling to be able to find it. But luckily, a milkmaid was passing with her cow, and she said that she was going to Dunholm. So all of the monks followed her. They came here, and then they built this. Well, I don't think they actually built this version because it's quite elaborate and quite large. Don't know how many monks there were, but it was the original version, and now they've subsequently replaced it with this. But it's a great story. Whether it's true or not, who knows, but it's worth coming and having a look, because if you come into the cathedral, you can see Cuthbert's remains today. They are still preserved here. Well, you can't actually see his body, but you can see the plot where he's based, and we'll have a look at that in a minute. So let's have a look inside Durham Cathedral itself, and as you approach it, you can see the magnificence of the building. It really is quite an impressive structure, over 1,000-year-old, and it sits in these grounds, which are very pleasant. It's a bit cold today. You can see some frost on the grass, but obviously it's not like this every day. And you'll be pleased to know that it's free to enter. You don't actually have to pay. There is a suggested donation that you can make, which I did, obviously. It's up to you. And when you go in, there's a one-way system. You turn to your right and you go into this vestibule area, which is a smaller part of the church before you enter the main cathedral itself. And this is quite an impressive building in itself. And when we went, they were playing some audio of monks singing. I think was a reference back to St. Cuthbert and his pals from the Lindisfarne monastery. And it gives you a nice opening flavour. This really is quite a nice building. And if you look back, you can see the structure that we've got here, and it really is quite incredible that this has been constructed over 1,000 years ago. It really is quite mind-bending, that. Now, as you enter the main cathedral itself, there is a small model here which shows the layout of the cathedral. And you can see that it has a cloisters area, so there is a piece of grass that the cathedral surrounds. And this is quite exciting if you're a Harry Potter fan, because some of the Harry Potter films were actually filmed on this location. So you can imagine yourself being Harry or Ron or Hermione looking out over this grass. Pretend that you're in the movie, but it is really actually a really nice, pleasant place to hang out in all seriousness. These are the sort of things that were constructed 1,000 years ago. In the UK, you don't tend to get it anymore. It does have a link to the university. A lot of the university students come here during their first week in Freshers Week. They have matriculation here, and they'll come and have photos, which I think is a really nice part of Durham University. And you can walk all the way around this. It's on all four sides, so very pleasant. It's covered, so even if it's raining, you can still wander around here. There's no glass in these windows, obviously, but it is a nice thing to do. It's very, very British. And for anybody that's a fan of the Marvel movies, apparently Avengers Endgame was also filmed here. Oh, a small part of it, obviously not the whole movie. So again, you've got a bit of a tip to Hollywood from something that is absolutely ancient. And for anybody that is a super fan of Harry Potter, you've got access to Professor McGonagall's classroom. This is where the scenes were actually filmed inside this room here. You can see that it's still in its original state as it was built over 1,000 years ago. There's actually a meeting going on in here. I'm not sure what that meeting's about. I don't think it's anything to do with Harry Potter, but you never know. Now, jumping back into the main cathedral itself, you can see this is quite an impressive structure. It's a really nice place. Obviously, it's quite quiet. I've made this audio after I did the filming. I just did some filming because I didn't want to really be walking around with a microphone talking about everything, really putting everybody off, because it's a place where you pay respects. And there are actually a lot of relics here. There's a lot of these sort of tombs that are sitting around that I assume hold a lot of these saints. And the one thing that I was really looking for when I came in here was to find St. Cuthbert, because his remains are still here today, all the way from Lindisfarne, those monks back in the 600 or 700 AD period. They were carrying him around looking for somewhere to go, and they brought him here. This is his final resting place. Now, this is the part of the cathedral that you may see on TV. This is where the choir would be located if you're having some sort of mass or remembrance service. So they would be in here singing all of the hymns. That's really quite a moving thing. I'm sure you've seen all of this sort of stuff on TV, but it's really quite nice. You can walk all the way through it. There's full access for everywhere. You don't really have anywhere that's sectioned off. And right at the far end of the cathedral, there is a special area for St. Cuthbert. So you go up these steps and you can see that this is St. Cuthbert's shrine. So he's got his own room right at the end of the cathedral itself. It's basically like a small church in itself. And this is where the great man himself is laid. He's underneath that slab there that you can see. There's actually a plaque here commemorating St. Cuthbert, and I assume that says St. Cuthbert on the actual engraving. It doesn't actually read like that because it's written, I assume, in Latin. And there's a picture on the roof of him himself. So a bit like having a bedroom where you've got a mirror on the ceiling.